But then the lord of the Geats seized by the shoulder the mother of Grendel, nor at all did he mourn over that feud. And he, the heart in battle, threw down his deadly foe when he was angry, so that she lay prone on the floor. But she very quickly, with grimmest of grips, requited him a hand reward, and made a clutch at him. And the weary in soul, that strongest of fighters, he the foot warrior, stumbled and fell. Then she sat on that hall guest, and drew forth her axe, broad and brown-edged, and would fain be avenging the death of her child, of her only son. But on his shoulder was the coat of mail, all woven, which saved his life and prevented the entrance of the point and the edge of the sword. Then, among the weapons, he caught sight of a sword, richer victories, an old weapon of the giants, and doughty of edge, the glory of warriors. It was the choicest of weapons, and it was greater than any other man could carry to the battle plain, and all glorious and good, a work of the giants. And he seized it by the belted hilt, he the warrior of the Danes, rough in the battle grim, and he brandished the ring sword, and despairing of life, he angrily struck so that hardly you grasped at her neck and broke the bone rings. And the point pierced through the doomed flesh covering, and she fell on the floor. The sword was all bloody, and the man rejoiced in his work. Shone forth the bright flame, and a light stood within, even as shineth the candle from the bright heavens. And then he looked on the hall, and turned to the wall. And the Thane of Hygelac, angry and resolute, heaved hard the weapon, taking it by the hilt. And well he requited him, this furious champion, when he saw the war-weary Grendel lying in death, all void of his life as formerly in heart the battle had scathed him. His body sprang apart, when after his death he suffered a stroke, a hard battle swing, and then he struck off his head. Then King Noonday, the valiant Danes left the headland, and the gold fend of men went homeward thence. And the strangers of the Geats, sick in mind, sat and stared at the water. They knew and expected not that they would see again their liege lord himself. Then the sword began to grow less, after the battle sweat, into icicles of steel. And the wonder it was that it all began to melt like as to ice, when our Father doth loosen the band of frost and unwinds the icicles. He who hath power over the seasons, he is the true God. Nor in these dwellings did the Lord of the Geats take any other treasure, though much he saw there, except the head and the hilt, decked out with jewels. The sword had melted, and the decorated weapon was burnt up. The blood was too hot, and so poisonous, the alien sprite who died in that conflict. Soon Beowulf was swinning, he who formerly awaited the onset of the hostile ones in the striving, and he dived upwards through the water. And the weltering surge and the spacious lands were all cleansed when the alien sprite gave up his life in this fleeting existence. He, the stout-hearted, came swimming to shore. He, the prince of the seamen, enjoying the sea spoils, the great burden of that which he had with him. They advanced towards him and gave thanks to God, that glorious crowd of thanes, and rejoiced in their Lord, that they could see him once more. Then was loosed quickly from that valiant man both helmet and shield. The sea became turbid, the water under welkin all stained with blood. And rejoicing in spirit, the brave men went forth with foot tracks and passed over the earth, the well-known pathways. And a hard task it was for each one of those proud men to bear that head away from the sea cliff. 4 of them with difficulty on a pole were bearing the head of Grendel to the gold hall, until suddenly, valiant and battle-brave, they came to the palace. 14 of the Geats marching along with their liege lord, who trod the field were the Then this prince of the Thanes, this man so bold of deed and honored by fate, this battle-dear warrior went into the hall to greet King Hrothgar. Then over the floor where warriors were drinking, they bore Grendel's head, a terror to the earls, and also to the queen. And men were looking at the splendid sight of the treasures. Beowulf spake, the son of Ecgtheow, Lo, son of Healfdene, lord of the Danes, we have brought that this booty of the sea all joyfully, this which thou seest as a token of glory. And I hardly escaped with my life, and hazarded an arduous task of war under water. And nearly was the battle ended for me. But that God shielded me. Nor could I, in that conflict, do aught with Hrunting, though the weapon was doughty. But the ruler of men granted me to see hanging on the wall a beauteous sword knighty and ancient. Often he guides those who are bereft of their comrades, and I drew the weapon. And I struck in that, striving the guardian of the house when I saw my chance. Then that battle sword that was all decked out, burned up so that blood gushed forth, the hottest of battle sweat. But I bore off that hilt fence from the enemy and wrought vengeance for the crimes, the deaths of the Danes, as it was fitting. And here I bid thee to take thy rest, all sorrowless in their heart, with the troop of thy men, and each of the thanes of thy people, the youth and the doughty ones. O Lord of the Danes, no longer need saw fear for them, because a Earl's life fell as before thou didst. Then was the golden hilt, the work of the giants, given into the hand of the old warrior, the hoary battle chief. Wulfgar spake and looked upon the hilt, the old heirloom on which was written in the beginning of the ancient feud since the flood. The all-embracing ocean slew the giant race, and they bore themselves presumptuously. They were folk strangers to the eternal God, to whom the ruler gave their deserts through whelming of waters. And thus was there truly marked on the sword guards of shining gold by means of rune staves, set down and stated by whom that sword was wrought at the first, that choicest of weapons, with its twisted hilt, adorned with a dragon. Then spake the wise man, the son of Healfdene, and all kept silence. He who doeth truth and right among the folk, and he who can recall the far-off days, he the old protector of his country, may say that this earl was well born. Thy fair fame is spread throughout the wide ways, among all peoples. O my friend, Beowulf, thou dost hold all with patience and might, with the proud of mind. I will perform the compact as we would have two agreed. Thou shalt be a lasting aid to thy people, a help to the heroes. Not so was Hermod to the sons of Egwella, the honor full Danish folk. For he did not become a joy to them, but slaughter and death to the Danish people. But in a fury, he killed the table companions, his boon comrades, until he alone, the famous chieftain, turned away from human joys. Do thou be learning by that example, and seek out manly virtues. I who am old in winters, sing thee this song. And a wonder is it to say how the mighty God giveth wisdom to mankind through wagness of mind, winds, and earlship. He hath had power over all. Sometimes he letteth the thought of man of famous care and can be turning to love, and giveth him earth joys in his own country, so that he himself foolishly never thinketh of his end. He dwelleth in weal, and neither disease nor old age doth deceive him a whit, nor through hostile sorrow darken his mind, nor anywhere do strife or sword hate show themselves, but all the world doth go as he willeth. He knoweth no evil, until his share of pride wasteth and groweth, while sleepeth the guardian, bulwark of his soul, and the sleep is too deep, bound up in afflictions, and the banesman draweth near who shooteth cruelly his arrows from the bow. Then, in his soul under helmet, is he stricken with bitter shaft, nor can he save himself from the crooked behest of the cursed ghost. And little doth he think of that which long he hath ruled. And the enemy doth covet, nor at all doth he give and boast the plated rings. And he then forgetteth and despiseth his fate, his share of honor which God before gave him, he the wielder of wondom. And in the end it doth happen that the body sinks fleeting, and doomed to death falleth. And another succeeds there too, who joyfully distributeth gifts, the old treasure of the O, and creth not for terrors. Guard thee against malicious hate, O my dear Beowulf, thou noblest of men, and choose for thyself that better part, eternal wisdom. Have no care for pride, O glorious champion. Now is the fame of thy strength proclaimed for a while. Soon will it be that disease or sword edge or grasp of fire or whelming of floods or grip of sword or flight of arrow or dire old age will sever thee from strength, or the luster of thine eyes will fail or grow dim. Then forthwith will happen that death will o'erpower thee, O thou noble man. Thus have I for 50 years held sway over the ring dames under the welkin and made safe by war many a tribe throughout the world with spears and swords, so that I recked not any man my foeman under the sweep of heaven. Lo! Then there came to me change in my homeland, sorrow after gaming. When Grendel, that ancient foe, became mine invader. And ever I bore much sorrow of mind through that feud. And may God be thanked, the eternal Lord, that I lingered in life, till I looked with 9 eyes on that head stained with sword blood after the old strife. Go now to thy seat and enjoy the feasting, thou who art glorious in war. And when morning cometh, there shall be a host of treasures in common between us. And the gate was glad of mind, and soon he went up to the high seat, as the proud chief had bidden him. Then renewed was fair, chanting as before, mongst these brave ones who sat on the floor. And the helmet of night grew dark over men, and the noble warriors arose. The venerable king wished to go to his bed, the old prince of the days. And the Geat, the shield warrior, desired greatly to go to his rest. And straightway a halting guided the far comer, well weary of his journey. He so carefully attended to all his needs, such as that day the ocean goers would fain be having. And the great-hearted one rested himself. The house towered on high, that was spacious and gold-decked. The guest slept within until the black raven heralded the joy of heaven. Then came the sun, hastening and shining over the earth. Warriors were hurrying, and athelings were eager to go to their people. The bold-hearted comer would visit the ship far away. He, the hardy one, Bade the son of Ecclef, carried forth runting, and commanded him to take his sword, that lovely piece of steel. And he gave thanks for the lending, and said he reckoned him a good war comrade and crafty in fighting. Not at all did he blame the edge of the sword. He was a proud man. When ready for the journey were all the warriors. Then Beowulf the atheling, of good worth to the Danes, went up to the dais, where was Hrothgar the faithful and bold, and greeted him there. Beowulf spake, the son of Ecgtheow. Now we, the seafarers, that have come from afar, desire to say that we are hastening back to Hygelad. And here have we been nobly rated on, and well thou hast treated us. And if I then on earth can gain a whit further greater heart or from thee, O Lord of men, than I have gained already in doing more deeds, thereto I'm right ready. And if I shall hear the sheet of waters that terrors are oppressing those who sit round thee, as while the enemies were doing upon thee, I will bring here 1,000 thanes, heroes to help thee. And I know that Hygelac, the lord of the Geats, the guardian of my folk, though young in years, will help me by word and works to bring to the honor, and bear spear to thine aid, the help of strength, if thou hast need of men. And if Rethric, the prince's child, should ever take service in the port of the Gada, he may find in it many a friend. It is better for him, who is doughty himself, to be seeking far countries. Hrothgar spake and gave him answer. The all-knowing Lord doth send words into thy mind. Never heard I a man speak more wisely. So young in years, thou art strong, of mien and proud of soul, and of words a wise sayer. When I come that strong out for something, they must believe they must beyond, but sometimes they can't go up to recur them or are complex. Thou hast brought about peace to the folk of the Geats and the Spear Danes, and a ceasing of the strife, and of the enmity which formerly they suffered. And whilst I am ruling the wide kingdom, treasures shall be in common between us, and many a man shall greet another with gifts over the sea. And the ringneck ship shall bear over the ocean both offerings and love tokens. I know the two peoples to be steadfast towards friend and foe, and blameless in all things in the old wise. Then in that hall the prince of the earls, the son of Healfdene, gave him 12 treasures. Then the king, the prince of the Danes, he of good lineage, kissed the best of thanes, and embraced his neck. And tears were falling down the face of the old man. And the old and wise man had hope of both things, but most of all of the other, that they might see each the other, those thoughtful men in council. For Beowulf was so dear to him that he could not restrain the whelming in his bosom, but a secret longing fast in the bonds of his soul was burning in his breast against his blood. So Beowulf the warrior, proud of his golden gifts, went forth of the grassy plain, rejoicing in treasure. And the sea-goer was awaiting her lord, where she lay at anchor. And as he was going, he often thought on the gift of Hrothgar. He was a king, blameless in every way, until old age, but scather of many, bereft him of the joys of strength. So many a proud young warrior came to the seaside, and they were carrying the ringnet, the interlaced coats of mail. And the ward of the shore noticed the going of the earls as he did their coming. Nor with evil intent did he hail the guests from the edge of the cliff, but rode up to them and said that welcome and bright-coated warriors went to the ship to the people of the Geats. Then on the sand was the spacious craft laden with battle weeds, the ringed prow with horses and treasures, and the mast tower high over Hrothgar's gifts. And he gave to the captain a sword bound with gold, so that by the new bench he was by that the worthier because of the treasure and the heirling. Then he went on board, the deep water to be troubling, and finally left the land of the Danes. And by the mast was one of the ocean garments, a sail fast by a rope. The seawood thundered, nor did the wind hinder the journey of that ship. The ocean-goer bounded forth, the foamy-necked one over the waves, the bound prow over the ocean streams, till they could see the cliffs of the Geats land, the well-known headlands. In the keel thronged up the shore, driven by the wind, and stood fast in the sand. And the harbor master was soon on the seashore, who of yore eagerly had seen from afar the going forth of the dear men. And he made fast the wide-bosomed ship by the anchor chains, so that the less the force of the waves could tear away that winsome ship. He commanded the treasure of the nobles to be borne up the beach, the fretted armor, and the plated gold. And not far thence it was for them to be seeking the giver of treasure, Hygelac, Hruthel's son, for at home he dwelleth, he and his companions, near to the sea wall. And splendid was that building, and the prince was a bold king, and the halls were high, and Hygd his wife was very young and wise and mature in her figure, though the daughter of Hreth had bided in that city but a very few years. But she was not mean, nor niggardly of gifts and of treasures to the people of the Geats. But Thritha was fierce, for she had committed a terrible crime, that bold queen of the folk. Nor is it a queenly custom for a woman to perform, though she might be peerless, that she should assail the life of a peace-wearer of her dear lord after a pretended insult. At least King Offa, the kinsman of Hemming, checked her in that. And she kept great love for the Prince of Heroes, and of all mankind he was, as I have learned by asking, the greatest by 2 seas. For Offa was a spear-keen man in gifts and in warfare, and widely was he honored, and he ruled his people wisely. And to him, Anthritho Eilmer was born to the help of heroes. He, the kinsman of Hemming, the nephew of Garmund, was crafty in battle. Then the hardy one himself, with his troop, set forth to tread the seashore, going along the sands, the wide sea beaches. The candle of the world shone, the sun that was shining from the south, and joyfully they journeyed, and with courage they marched along to where they heard by inquiring that the good Prince of Earls, the banesman of Ongentheow the young war king, was giving out rings within the city. And quickly was made known to Hygelac the coming of Beowulf, that he, the prince of warriors, the comrade in arms, was returning alive and hale from the battle play, was coming to the palace. And straightway was there room made for the foot guests on the floor of the hall by command of the king. And he that had escaped scot-free from the contest sat with the king, kinsman with kinsman, and the lord with courteous speech saluted the brave man with high swelling words. And the daughter of Hurth poured forth from the mead cups throughout that great hall, for she loved well the people, and carried round the drinking stoups to each of the warriors. And Hygelac began to question his comrade, as curiosity prompted him as to the journey of the sea Geats. How went it with thee, dear Beowulf, in thy faring, when thou didst deafen thee, suddenly to be seeking a contest over the salt waters, in battle at heart? And thou didst requite the widely known woe which Hrothgar was suffering, that famous lord. And I brooded, oh, that mind, care with sorrow whelmings, for I trusted not in the journey of the dear man. And for a long time I bade thee not a whit to be greeting the murderous stranger, but to let the Southdanes themselves wage war against Grendel. All that I avenged, so that no kinsman of Grendel anywhere on earth needed to boast of that uproar by twilight. No, not he of that kindred who liveth the longest, encircled by the fen. And first, to greet Hrothgar, I went to the ring hall. And straightway the famous kinsman of Helfden, when he knew my intention, gave me a place with his own son, and the troop was all joyful. Nor ever have I seen greater joy amongst any hall-dwellers under the arch of heaven. Sometimes the famous queen, the peace-bringer of the folk, walked over the whole floor and encouraged the young sons. And often she gave to the man a twisted ring as she went to the high seat. And sometimes for the noble band, The daughter of Hrafter carried the ale cups to the earls at the end of the high table. And I heard those who sat in that hall calling her Frey Walry, as she gave the studded treasure to the heroes. And she, young and gold decked, is betrothed to the glad son of Froda, the friend of the Danes and the guardian of the kingdom, has brought this to pass and taken that counsel, so as to set at rest by that betrothal many a slaughter feud and ancient strife. And often it happens that a little while after the fall of a people, the deadly spear seldom lieth at rest, for the bride be doughty, till the day on which they risked their own and their comrades' lives in the battle. Now here the son of I know not which of the slayers, all boasting of treasures, goeth into the hall and boasteth of Noder, and carrieth the gift which thou shouldst rightly possess. Then he exhorteth and bringeth to mind each of the occasions with sorrowful words, until the time cometh that the thane of the bride dieth, all stained with blood for the deeds of his father by the piercing of the sword, having forfeited his life. But the other fence escapeth alive, for he knows the land well. Then the oath swearing of earls is broken on both sides, when deadly enmities surge up against Indeld, and his love for his wife grows cooler after whelming care. And for this reason, I reckon not sincere the friendliness of the Heathobards towards the Danes or the troop peace between them, the plighted troth. Now I speak out again about Grendel, for that thou knowest full well, O giver of treasure, how went that hand-to-hand fight of the heroes. When the jewel of heaven glided over the world, then the angry sprite, the terrible and evening fierce foe, came to visit us, where we were dwelling in the hall, all safe and sound. There was battle impending to Hansio, the life bale, to the doomed one. And he first fell the champion beaker. For Grendel was to the famous thane, a banesman by biting and devoured whole the dear man. Nor would he, the bloody-toothed slayer, mindful of bales, go out empty-handed any sooner again, forth from the gold hall. But he proved my strength of main, and ready-handed he grasped at me. An ample and wondrous glove, hung fast by cunning bands. And it was cunningly fashioned by the craft of devils, and with skins of the dragon. And the fierce doer of deeds was wishful to put me therein, one among many. But he could not do so, for I angrily stood upright. And too long would it be to tell how I requited all evil to that scather of the people, where I, O my liege lord, honored thy people by means of good deeds. He escaped on the way, and for a little while he enjoyed life pleasures. But his right hand showed his tracks in heart, and he sank to the bottom of the sea, all abject and sad of heart. And the Lord of the Danes rewarded me for that battle rush with many a piece of plated gold, and with ample treasure, when morning came, and we had set ourselves down to the feasting. And there was singing and rejoicing. And the wise man of the Danes, who had learned many things, told us of olden days. And the bold in battle sometimes touched the harp strings, the wood that was full of music, and sometimes he gave forth a song that was true and sad, and sometimes large-hearted. The king related a wondrous spell, and sometimes the old man, encumbered by years, some ancient warrior, lamented his lost youth and strength in battle. His heart was tumultuous when he, of many winters, recalled all the number of them. So we rejoiced the livelong day until another night came down upon them. Then was the mother of Grendel quickly ready for vengeance, and came on a rueful journey, for death had carried off her son, that war hate of the Geats. And the uncanny wife avenged her child. And Aesir, that wise and ancient counselor, departed this life. Nor when morning came, might the Danish people burn him with brand, that death-weary man, nor lay the beloved man on the funeral pyre. For she bore away the body in her fiendish grip under the mountain streams. And that was to Hrothgar, the bitterest of griefs which for long had befallen the prince of the people. Then the prince, sad in mood by thy life, entreated me that I should do a deed worthy of an earl, midst welter of waters, and risk my life, and achieve glory. And he promised me rewards. I then discovered the grim and terrible guardian of the whelming waters at the sea's bottom, so widely talked of. There was a hand-to-hand engagement between us for a while, and the sea boiled with gore. I cut off the head of Grendel's mother in the hall at the bottom of the sea with powerful sword. And I scarce saved my life in that conflict. But not yet was my doomsday. And afterwards, the Prince of Earls gave me many gifts. He, the son of Healfdene. So, in good customs with the king of the people, nor had I lost the rewards, the meed of strength, for the son of Healfdene bestowed upon me treasures, according to my choice, which I will bring to thee, O my warrior king, and graciously will I proffer them. Again, all favor depends on me. For few chief kinsmen have I saved thee, O high Galak. So he proud prince, who bestowed upon me all this battle gear, and a certain word he uttered to me, that I should first give thee his kindly greeting. He said that Hrothgar, the king of the Danes, possessed it a long while, nor formerly would he giving his son, the brave Eorsha, through dear, though dear he was to him. Do thou enjoy all well? Then I heard that 4 horses of reddish-yellow hue followed the armor, and thus he did him honor with horses and gifts. So should a kinsman do. By no means should they weave cunning nets for each other, or with secret craft devise death to a comrade. His nephew was very gracious to Hygelac, the brave in strife, and each was striving to bestow favors on the other. And I heard that he gave to Hygd the neck ring so curiously and wondrously wrought, which Rapio, a daughter of royal birth, had given him, and 3 horses also slender and saddle bright. and her breast was adorned with the ring she had received. And Beowulf, son of Ecgtheow, so famous in warfare and in good deeds, bore himself boldly and fulfilled his fate. Nor did he slay the drunken hearth comrades. He was not sad-minded, but he, the battle-dear one, but the greatest of craft known to man, held fast the lasting and generous gift which God gave him. For long had he been despised, so that the warriors of the Geats looked not upon him as a good man, nor did the Lord of troops esteem him as of much worth on the mead bench. Besides, they thought him slack and by no means a warlike ackling. Then came a change from all his distresses to this glorious man. Then the Prince of Earls, the battle-brave king, commanded that the heirloom of Riffle, all decked out in gold, should be brought in. For of swords there was no more glorious treasure among the Geats. And he laid it on the bosom of Beowulf and gave him 7,000 men and a building and a throne. And both of them held the land, the earth, the rights in the land, as an hereditary possession. But the other, who was the better man, had more especially a wide kingdom. And he held Slade there in 50 winters, and the wise king was he, that old guardian of his country, until on dark nights a dragon began to make raids. He watched over the hoard in a lofty cavern, the steep rocky cave, and the path thereto lay under the cliffs, unknown to men. And what man it was who went therein, I know not, but he took from the heathen hoard a whole bowl, decked with treasure. In order to give it back again, though he had beguiled the guardian of the hoard when he was sleeping, by the craft of a thief. And Beowulf found out that the dragon was angry. And in former times, death had taken them all away. And he alone of the warriors of the people who longest lingered there, full lonely and sad for loss of friends was he, and he hoped for a tarrying. And this hill was quite near to the ocean waves, and to the sea Nisus, and no one could come near thereto. And he, the guardian of rings, carried inside the cave the heavy treasures of plated gold, and uttered some few words. Do thou, O earth, hold fast the treasures of earls, which heroes may not hold. What? From thee, in days of your good men, obtained it. Deadly warfare and terrible life bale carried away all the men of my people, of those who gave up life. They had seen hall joy, and they saw the joys of heaven. I have not anyone who can carry a sword or polish a gold-plated cup, the dear drinking flagon. The doughty ones have hastened elsewhere. The hard hell that dight with gold shall be deprived of gold plate. The polishers sleep the sleep of death, who should make ready to battle grim. Likewise the coat of mail which endured in the battle was shattered over shields by the bite of the iron spears, and perishes after the death of the warrior. Nor can the ring burning go far and wide on behalf of heroes after the passing of the war chief. No joy of harping is there, nor mirth of stringed instruments, nor does the goodly hawk swing through the hall, nor doth the swift horse paw in the courtyard. And Despale have sent away many generations of men. Thus then, Sad at heart, he lamented his sorrowful plight, one for many, and unblithely he wept both day and night until the roaming waters of death touched his heart. And the ancient twilight Scather found the joyous treasure, standing open and unprotected. He it was who flaming seeks the cliff sides. He, the naked and hateful dragon, who flieth by night wrapped about with fire. And the dwellers upon earth greatly fear him. And he should be seeking a hoard upon earth, where old in winters he guardeth the heaving gold, nor aught.
Is he the better thereby?
And thus the scather of the people, the mighty monster, had in his power the hall of the hoard 300 years upon the earth, until a man in anger kindled his fury. For he carried off to his liege lord the plated drinking flagon, and offered his master a treaty of peace. Thus was the hoard discovered, the hoard of rings plundered, and a boon was granted to the miserable man. And the Lord saw for the first time this ancient work of men. Then awoke the dragon, and the strife was renewed. He sniffed at the stone, and the stout-hearted saw the footmark of his foe. He had stepped too far forth with cunning craft near the head of the dragon. So may anyone who is undoomed easily escape woes, and exile who rejoices in the favor of the wielder of the wolf. The guardian of the hoard along the ground was eagerly seeking, and the man would be finding who had deprived him of his treasure while he was sleeping. Hotly and fiercely he went around all on the outside of the barrow, but no man was there in the waste. Still, he gloried in the strife and the battle working. Sometimes he returned to the cavern and sought the treasure vessels, and soon he found that one of the men had searched out the gold, the high heap of treasures. The guardian of the hoard was sorrowfully waiting until evening should come, and very furious was the keeper of that barrow, and the loathsome one would fain be requiting the robbery of that dear drinking stoop with fire and flame. Then, as the dragon wished, day was departing. Not any longer would he wait within walls, but went forth girt with baleful fire. And terrible was this beginning to the people in that country, and sorrowful would be the ending to their lord, the giver of treasure. Then the fiend began to belch forth fire and to burn up the glorious palace. And the flames thereof were a horror to men, nor would the loathly air flyer leave aught living thereabouts. And this warfare of the dragon was seen far and wide by men, this striving of the foe who caused dire distress, and how the war scaver hated and harmed the people of the Geats. And he hurried back to his hoard in the dark cave hall of which he was lord, ere it was day dawn. He had encircled the dwellers in that land with fire and brand. He trusted in his cavern and in battle and his cliff wall. But his hope deceived him. Then was the terror made known to Beowulf quickly and soothly, mainly that his very homestead, the best of houses, that throne of the Geats, was dissolving in the whelming fire. And full rueful was it to the good man, and the very greatest of sorrows. And the wise man was thinking that he had bitterly angered the wielder of all things, the eternal God, in the matter of some ancient customs. And within his breast, gloomy brooding was welling, as was by no means his wont. The fiery dragon had destroyed by flame the stronghold of the people, both the seaboard and neighboring land. And therefore, the king of the Watergeats devised revenge upon him. Now Beowulf, the prince of earls and protector of warriors, commanded them to fashion him a glorious war shield, all made of iron. For he well knew that a wooden shield would be unavailing against flames. For he, the age-long noble atheling, must await the end of days that were fleeting of this world life, he and the dragon together, though long he had held sway over the hoard of treasure. And the Prince of Rings scorned to employ a troop against the wide-flying monster in the great warfare. Nor was that the least hand-to-hand fight, when Hygelac was slain there in the Frisian land, when the king of the Geats, the friendly lord of the folk, the son of Hrethel, died in the battle rush, beaten down by the sword, drunk with blood drinking. Then fled Beowulf by his very own craft, and swam through the seas. And he had on his arm alone 30 battle trappings when he went down to the sea. Nor did the Hepbar need to be boasting of that battle on foot, they who bore their linden shields against him. And few of them ever reached their homes safe from that wolf of the battle. But Beowulf, son of Ecgtheow, swam over the expanse of waters, miserable and solitary, back to his people, where he'd proffered him treasures and a kingdom, rings and dominion. She did not think that her son Herdred would know how to hold their native seats against strangers, now that Hygelac was dead. Nor could the wretched people prevail upon the atheling in anywise, to show himself lord of Herdred, or to be choosing the kingship. Nevertheless, he gave friendly counsel to the folk with grace and honor, until that he was older and held sway over the Watergeats. Then those exiles, the sons of Other, sought him over the seas. They had rebelled against the lord of the Swedes, the best of the sea kings, that famous chieftain of those who bestowed rings in Sweden. And that was life's limit to him. For the son of Hygelac, famishing there, was allotted a deadly wound of a swing of a sword. And the son of Ongentheow went away thence to visit his homestead when Herdred lay dead, and left Beowulf to sit on the throne and to rule the Goths. And he was a good king. He was minded in after days to be requiting the fall of the prince. He was a friend to the wretched Egils, and helped Egils, the son of Othir, with an army, with warriors and with weapons, over the wide seas. And then he wrought vengeance with cold and painful journeyings, and deprived the king of life. Thus the son of Ecgtheow had escaped all the malice and the hurtful contests and the courageous encounters, until the day on which he is to wage war with the dragon. And so it came to pass that the lord of the Geats went forth with 12 others, and inflamed with fury, to spy out the dragon for he had heard tell of the malice and hatred he had shown to men, whence arose that feud, and by the hand of the informer, famous treasure came into their possession. He was the 13th man in the troop, who set on foot the beginning of the conflict. And the sorrowful captive must show the way thither, possibly completely slow. He, against his will, went to the earth hall, for he alone knew the barrow under the ground, near to the sea surge, where it was seething, the cavern that was full of ornaments and filigree. And the uncanny guardian thereof, the panting werewolf, held possession of the treasures, and an ancient was he under the earth. That it was no easy bargain to be gaining for any living man. So the battle-hardened king sat down on the cliff and took leave of his hearth comrades, he the gold friend of the Geats. And his heart was sad, wavering, and ready for death. And Weir came very near to him who would be greeting the venerable warrior, and be seeking his soul treasure, to divide asunder his life from his body. And not long after that was the soul of the atheling imprisoned in the flesh. Beowulf spake, the son of Exextio. Many a war rush I escaped from in my youth, in times of conflict. And while I call it all to mind, I was 7 years old when the Lord of Treasures, the friendly lord of the folk, took me away from my father. And King Hrethel had me in thrall, and gave me treasure, and feasted me, and kept the peace. Nor was I a whit less dear, a child to him, than any of his own kin, Herbald and Hekin, or my own dear Hygelac. And for the eldest was a murder bed most unhappily made up by the deeds of a kinsman, when Hathan his lordly friend brought him low with an arrow from out of his horn bow, and missing the mark he shot through his brother with a bloody javelin. And that was a fight not to be atoned for by gifts of money. And a crime it was, and wearying to the soul in his breast. Nevertheless, the atheling must unavenged be losing his life. For so is it a sorrowful thing for a venerable man to see his son riding the gallows tree, when he singeth a dirge a sorrowful psalm, as his son hangeth, a joy to the ravens. And he, very old, may not give him any help. And every morning at the feasting, he is reminded of his son's journey elsewhither. And he careth not to await another heir within the cities, when he alone, through the fatality of death, hath found out the deeds. Heartbroken, he looks on the bower of his son, on the wasted wine hall, become the hiding place for the winds, and bereft of the revels. The riders are sleeping, the heroes in the tomb. Nor is any sound of harping, or games in the courts as erewhile there were. Then he goeth to the sleeping place, and chanteth a sorrow song, the one for the other. And all too spacious seemed to him the fields and the dwelling house. So the prince of the Geats bore welling heart sorrow after Herbald's death, nor a whit could he requite the feud on the murderer, nor visit his hate on that warrior with loathly deeds, though by no means was he dear to him. He then forsook the joys of life because of that sorrow wound which befell him, and chose the light of God, and left to his sons land and towns when he departed this life, as a rich man doth. Then was there strife and struggle between the Swedes and the Geats, and over the wide seas there was warfare between them, a hardy battle striving when Neffel met with his death. And the children of Ongentheow were brave and battle fierce, and would not keep the peace on the high seas, but round about Rearsnaborg they often worked terrible and dire distress. And my kinsmen wrought vengeance for that feud and crime, as all men know, though the other bought his life with a hard bargain. And war was threatening Hethsen, the lord of the Geats. Then I heard tell that on the morrow, one brother the other avenged on the slayer with the edge of the sword, whereas Ongentheow seeketh out Eofor. The war helmet was shattered, and the ancient of the Swedes fell prone, all sword pale. And well enough the hand kept in mind the feud and withheld not the deadly blow. And I yielded him back in the warfare the treasures he gave me with the flashing sword, as was granted to me. And he gave me land and a dwelling and a pleasant country. And he had no need to seek among the Gifthas, or the Spear Danes, or in Sweden a worse war wolf, or to buy one that was worthy. And I would always be before him in the troop, alone in the front of the battle, and so forever will I be striving, whilst this sword endureth. But earlier and later has often stood me in good stead, since the days when for doubt nor was he fated to bring ornaments or breast wrappings to the Frisian king, that he said the guardian of the Standig, he the Atheling, fell on the battlefield all too quickly. Nor was the sword edge his bane, but the battle grip broke the whelmings of his heart and the bones of his body. I would not carry a sword or weapon against the dragon, if I knew how else I might maintain my boast against the monster, as I formerly did against Grendel. But in this conflict I expect the hot battle fire, both breath and poison. Therefore I have both shield and byrnie. I will not flee from the warder of the barrow a foot space, but it shall be with me at the wall of the barrow, as Weird shall direct, who created all Nin. I am strong in soul, so that I will refrain from boasting against the war flyer. Await ye on the barrow, guarded by birdies, O ye warriors in armor, and see which of us two will better survive his wounds after the battle rush. This is no journey for you, nor fitting for any man save only for me, that he should share a conflict with the monster and do deeds worthy of an earl. I will gain possession of the gold by my courage, or battle in deadly evil shall take away your lord. Then, nor was that a coward's journey. Then Beowulf, possessed of manly virtues, who had escaped in many a conflict and crashing of battle when men encountered on foot, saw standing by the wall of the barrow a stream rock out thence from the barrow. Nor could he survive any while near to the hoard unburnt, because of the flame of the dragon. Then, in a fury, the prince of the Wiedergeats let a torrent of words escape from his breast, and the stout-hearted one stormed. And his war-clear voice resounded under the hoar cliffs, and hatred was stirred, for the guardian of the horde recognized well the voice of Beowulf. And that was no time to be seeking friendship. And the breath of the monster, the hot battle sweat, came forth from the rock at the first, and the earth resounded. The warrior, the lord of the Geats, raised his shield under the barrow against the terrible sprite. Now the heart of the dragon was stirred up to seek the conflict. The good war king had formerly drawn his sword, the ancient heirloom, not slow of edge, and each of them who intended evil was a terror the one to the other. And the stern-minded one, he, the prince of friendly rulers, stood by his steep shield, and he and the dragon fell quickly together. Beowulf waited warily, all in his war gear. Then the flaming monster bent as he charged, hastening to his doom. The shield well protected life and body of the famous warrior for a lesser while than he had willed it, if he was to be wielding victory in that contest on the first day. But Weird had not so fated it. And the lord of the Geats uplifted his hand, and struck at the horribly bright one, heavy with heirlooms, so that the edge stained with blood gave way on the bone, and bit in less strongly than its master had need of when pressed by the business. Then, after the battle swing, the guardian of the barrow was rough-minded, and cast forth slaughter fire. Battle flames flashed far and wide, and the son of the Geats could not boast of victory in the conflict. The sword had failed him, naked in the battle, as was unfitting for so well-tempered a steel. And it was not easy for the famous son of Ecthio to give up possession of the bottom of the sea, and that he should against his will dwell in some place far otherwhere, as must each man let go these fleeting days sooner or later. And not long after this, Beowulf and the monster met together again. The guardian of the horde took good heart, and smoke was fuming in his breast. And fierce were his sufferings as the flames embraced him, he who before had ruled over the folk. Nor at all, in a troop, did his hand comrades stand round him, that warrior of Athelings, showing courage in the battle, that they fled into a wood their lives to be saving. And the mind of one of them was surging with sorrows, for to him whose thoughts are pure, friendship cannot ever change. Beowulf was he called, he who was the son of Veilston, the beloved shield warrior, the prince of the Danes, and the kinsman of Elfir. He saw his lord suffering burning pain under his visor. Then he called to mind the favor that he had bestowed upon him in days of yore, the costly dwelling of the Wagemundings, and all the folk rights which his father had possessed. Nor did he speak of the feud, though he slew his brother's son. And he held possession of the treasures many years, both the sword and the byrnie, until such time as his son should hold the earlship, as his father had done. And he gave to the Geats a countless number of each kind of war weeds. When he in old age passed away from this life, on the outward journey, that was the first time for the young champion that he went into the war rush with his noble lord. Nor did his mind melt within him, nor did the heirloom of his kinsmen at the war tide. And the dragon discovered it when the two came together. And he chose us for this warfare and for this journey of his own free will and reminded us of glory. And to me he gave these gifts when he counted us good spear warriors and brave helmet bearers, although our Lord and now is the day come that our Lord hath need of our prowess and of goodly warriors. Let us then go to the help of our battle Lord. While it lasts, the grim terror of fire. God knows well of me that I would much rather that the flame should embrace my body together with that of my Lord, the giver of gold. Nor does it seem to me to be fitting that we should carry shields back to the homestead, except we have first laid low the foe and protected the life of the prince of the Weeders. And while I know that his old deserts were not that he alone of the youth of the Geats should suffer grief and sink in the fighting. Now shalt thou, the braving deeds and the resolute noble, save thy life with all thy might. I am come to help thee. After these words came the angry dragon, the terrible and hostile sprite yet once again, and decked in his various hues of whelmings of fire against his enemies, the men that he hated. And the wood of the shield was burnt up with the waves of flame, and his byrnie could not help the young spear warrior. Yet did the youth bravely advance under the shield of his kinsman, when his own had been destroyed by the flame. Then again the war-king bethought him of glory, and struck a mighty blow with his battle sword, so that it fixed itself in his head, forced in by violence. And Nightling, Beowulf's sword old and gray, broke in pieces and failed in the contest. It was not given to him that sharp edges of swords should help him in battle. His hand was too strong, so that it overtaxed every sword, as I have been told, by the force of its swing, whenever he carried into battle a wondrous hand weapon. And he was now wise the better for a sword. Then for the third time, the skater of the people, the terrible fire dragon, was mindful of feuds, and he rushed on the brave man when he saw that he had room, all hot and battle grim, and surrounded his neck with bitter bones. And he was all be-bloodied over with life blood, and the sweat welled up in waves. Then I heard tell that the Earl of the King of the People showed in his time of need unfailing courage in helping him with craft and keenness, as was fitting for him to do. Then the good King Beowulf got possession of his wits again, and drew his bitter and battle sharp short sword that he bore on his shield. And the King of the Geats cut asunder the dragon in the midst of his body. And the fiend fell prone. Courage had driven out his life, and they two together had killed him. Noble comrades in arms. And thus should a man who is a thane always be helping his lord at his need. And that was the very last victory achieved by that prince during his life work. Then the wound which the earth dragon had formerly dealt him began to burn and to swell. And he soon discovered that the baleful venom was seeding in his breast the internal poison. Then the young noble looked on the giant's work as he sat on a seat, musing to be the cliff wall. How arches of rock, firmly on columns, held the eternal earth house within. Then the most noble thane refreshed his blood, stained and famous lord, his dear and friendly prince with water, with his own hands, and loosened the helmet for the battle-sated warrior. And Beowulf spake over his deathly pitiful wound, for well he knew that he had enjoyed the day's while of his earthly joy, and the number of his days was all departed, and death was coming very near. Now, said Beowulf, I would have given battle reeds to my son, if any heir had been given to me of my body. I held sway over these peoples 50 years. And there was no full king of those who sat round about who dared to greet me with swords or oppress with terror. At home have I bided my appointed time, and well I held my own, nor did I seek out coming feuds, nor did I swear many unrighteous oaths. And I sick of my life, wounds, can have joy of all this. For the wielder of men cannot reproach me with murder of kinsmen, when my life shall pass forth from my body. Now do thou, beloved Wiglaf, go quickly and look on the hoard under the horstone, now that the dragon lieth prone and asleep, sorely wounded and bereft of his treasure. And as Wiglaf, exulting in victory, came by the seat, he saw many gems shining and shaped like the sun and gleaming gold, all lying on the ground and wondrous decorations on the wall. And there also was many a helmet, ancient and rusty, and many armorings cunningly twisted. The possession of treasure and of gold on the earth may easily make proud all of mankind. Let him hide it who will. Likewise he saw the all-gilded banner lying high over the hoard, that greatest of wondrous handiwork, and all woven by the skill of human hands. And therefrom went forth a ray of light, so that he could see the floor of the cave and look carefully at the jewels. And there was no sign of the dragon, for the sword edge had carried him off. Then I heard tell how in that barrow one at his own doom plundered the hoard, that old work of giants, and bore away on his arms both cups and dishes. And the banner also he took, that brightest of beacons. Beowulf's sword, with its iron edge, had formerly injured him who had been the protector of these treasures for a long time, and had waged fierce flame terror because of the hoard fiercely welling in the midnight hour, until he was killed. The messenger was in haste, and eager for the return journey, and laden with jewels, and curiosity tormented him as to whether he would find the bold-minded prince of the Geats alive on the battlefield, and bereft of strength where before he had left him. Then he with the treasures found the glorious lord, his own dear master, at the last gasp, and all stained with blood. And he began to throw water upon him, until the power of speech brake through his mind. And Beowulf spake, and with sorrow he looked upon the hoard. I would utter words of thanks to the Lord and wondrous King, to the eternal God, for the treasures which now I am looking upon, that I have managed to obtain them for my dear people before my death day. Now that I have in exchange for this hoard of treasure, sold my life in my old age, and laid it down, do thou still be helping the people in their need, for I may no longer be lingering here. And he gave it to his thane, to the young spear warrior, the gold-adorned helmet, the ring and byrnie, and bade him enjoy it well. Thou, O Wiglaf, he said, art the last heir of our race, of that of the Wegmundings. Weird has swept away all my kinsmen to their fated doom, all the earls in their strength, and I shall follow after them. Now that was the very last word of the old warrior's breast thoughts. And his soul went forth from his breast to be seeking the doom of the truth, fast ones. Then had it sorrowfully come to pass for the young warrior that he saw his most beloved in a miserable plight on the earth at his life's end. Likewise the terrible dragon, his slayer, lay there bereft of life and pressed sore by ruin. And the coil-driving could no longer wield the hoard of rings, but the iron edges of the sword, well-tempered and battle-gashed, the hammer's leavings had carried him off, so that the wide flyer, still because of his wounds, fell to the earth near to the hoard hall. And no more in playful wise at the midnight hour did he drift through the air. This dragon, proud in his gainies of treasure, showed not his face, but was fallen to the earth, because of the handiwork of the battle warrior. And as I have heard, it would have profited that few of the mighty men, even though they were doughty in deeds of all kinds, though they should rush forth against the flaming breath of the poisonous scather, then Beowulf's share of lordly treasure was paid for by his death. And both he and the dragon had come to an end of their fleeting days. And not long after that, the laggards in battle, those cowardly tree breakers, 10 of them together, came back from the woodlands. They who erewhile had dreaded the play of javelins when their lord had sore need of their help. But they were filled with shame, and carried their shields and daddle weeds to where the old prince was lying. And they looked on Wiglaf. He, the foot warrior, sat a-wary near to the shoulders of his lord, and sought to rouse him by sprinkling water upon him, but he succeeded not at all. Nor could he, though he wished it ever so much, keep life in the chieftain, or avert a whit the will of the wielder of all things. Every man's fate was decided by the act of God, as is still the case. Then was a grim answer easily given by the young man to these who erewhile had lost their courage. Wiglaf spake, he the son of Veilstan, the sad-hearted. He who will speak truth may say that the lord and master who gave you gifts and warlike trappings, in which ye are now standing, the king of the folk needed not indeed to boast of his army comrades, yet God, the wielder of victory, granted to him that alone he avenged himself with the edge of the sword when he had need of strength. And but a little life protection could I give him in the battle, yet I sought to help him beyond my strength. The dragon was by so much the weaker when I struck with my sword that deadly foe. Concentrations have fault.
Could they become? Asking, exploiting.
Too few were the defenders thronged around their lord when his fated hour came. And now shall the receiving of treasure, and the gift of swords, and all joy of home and hope cease forever to men of your kin. And every man of you of the tribe must wander empty of land rights, since noble men will learn far and wide of your flight and inglorious deed. Death would be better for earls than a life of reproach. Then he bade them announce that battle work at the entrenchment up over the sea cliff, where that troop of earls sat sorrowful in soul through the morning, holding their shields. And he who rode to and fro o'er the headland was little sparing of fresh tidings, but said to all who were sitting there, now was the joy-giver of the Geats, fast on his deathbed. And by his side lieth the enemy of his life, sick of his dagger wounds. Nor could he inflict with the sword any wound on that monster. Beowulf sits over Beowulf. He is the son of Laerston, the earl over the other one who is dead, and reverently keeps ward over the loathes and the beloved. But there is an expectation of a time of war to the people. Since Franks and Frisians, the fall of the king has become widely known. The hard strife was shapen against the Hugs when Hygelac came with a fleet into the Frisian lands where the Hetwer overcame him in battle, and by their great strength and courage brought it to pass that the shield warrior should stoop. We fell in the troop, nor did the prince give jeweled armor to the doughty ones. The mercy of the Merling was not always shown to us, nor do I expect aught of peace or good faith from the Swedish people. But it was well known that on Genthio bereft Hethson, the son of her full of life, over against Ravenswood, and because of pride, the warlike Swedes first sought out the people of the Geats. And he attacked the remnant with a great army, weary though he was with his wounds. And the livelong night he vowed low upon the wretched troop, and said that on the morrow he would by the edge of the sword slay some, and hang them up on the gallows tree for a sport of the birds. But help came to the sorrowful in soul at the dawn of day, when they heard the horn of Hygelac and the blast of his trumpet, and the good man came on the track faring with the doughty warriors of the people. And the blood track of both Swedes and Geats, the slaughter rush of warriors, was widely seen, how the folk stirred up the feud amongst them. The good man, wise and very sad, went away with his comrades to seek out a stronghold. Earl Ongentheow turned away to higher ground, for he, the war-crafty one, had heard of the prowess of Hygelac the Proud. He had no trust in his power to resist, or that he would be able to refuse the demands of the seamen, the ocean-farers, or defend the treasure he had taken, the children, and the bride. defense afterwards. Being old, he sought refuge under the earth wall. Then was chase given to the people of the Swedes, and the banner of Hygelac borne aloft. And they swept over the field of peace, when the sons of Refel thronged to the entrenchment. And there, too, was Onkenthale, he the gray-haired king of the people, driven to bay at the edge of the sword, and forced to submit to the sole doom of Eofor. And angrily did Wulf, son of Vonred, smite him with weapon, so that from that swinging blow-blood sweat gushed forth in streams under the hair of his head. Yet the old Swede was not terrified thereby, but quickly gave back a terrible blow by a worse exchange, when the king of the people turned thither. Nor could Wulf, the bold son of Onwed, give back a blow to the old churl, for Ongentheow had formerly cut his helmet in two, so that he, stained with blood, fell prone perforce to the ground. But not yet was he doomed, but he raised himself up, for the wound touched him close. And the hardy Thane of Hygelac, when his brother lay prostrate, caused the broadsword, the old giant sword, to crash through the wall of shields upon the gigantic helmet. Then stooped the king, the shepherd of the people, mortally wounded. And there were many who bound up his kinsmen and quickly upraised him when room had been made so that they might possess the battlefield, while one warrior was plundering another. One took the iron shield of Ongentheow and his hard hilted sword and his helmet, and carried the trappings of the old man to Hygelac. And he received the treasures, and fairly he promised reward for the people, and he did as he promised. The lord of the Geats, son of Refel, rewarded with very costly gifts the battle onset of Eofor and Wulf when he got back to the palace, and bestowed upon each of them 100,000 of land and locked rings. Nor could any man in the world reproach him for that reward, since they had gained glory by fighting. And he gave to Aelfor his only daughter, she who graced his homestead, to wed as a favor. And this is the feud, and the enmity and hostile strife of men, which I expect the Swedish people will seek to awaken against us, when they shall hear we have lost our prince, he who in days of yore held treasure and kingdom against our foolish. Now, is it best for us to hasten to look upon our king and bring him who gave to us rings to the funeral pyre? Nor shall a part only of the treasure be melted with the proud man, but there is a hoard of wealth, an immense mass of gold, bought at a grim cost, for now at the very end of his life he bought for us rings. And he lied not at all, in weird or word. Then the troop rose up together, and all unblithely went under evil's nest to look on the wonder, and tears were welling. Then they found him on the sand in his last resting place, and bereft of soul, who had given them rings in days gone by, and then had the last day drawn to its close, for the good man Beowulf, the warrior king, the lord of the Weder Goths, had died a wondrous death. But before this, they had seen a more marvelous sight. The dragon on the sea plain, the loathsome one lying light opposite. And there was the fire dragon, grimly terrible, and scorched with fire. And he was 50 feet in length as he lay there stretched out. He had had joy in the air a while by night, but afterwards he went down to visit his den. But now he was the prisoner of death and had enjoyed his last of earth cares. And by him stood drinking cups and flagons, and dishes were lying there, and a costly sword, all rusty, and eaten through as though they had rested 1,000 winters in the bosom of the earth. Then was it quite clear to them that the affair had not prospered with the monster, who had hidden ornaments within the cave under the cliff. The guardian thereof had slain some few in former days. Then had the feud been wrathfully avenged. And it is a mystery anywhere when a valiant earl reaches the end of his destiny, when a man may no longer with his kinsmen dwell in the mead hall. And thus was it with Beowulf when he sought out the guardian of the cavern and his cunning crafts. And he himself knew not how his departure from this world would come about. He was not greedy of gold, and had more readily in former days seen the favor of God. Wigro spake, the son of Yastan. Often shall many an earl of his own only will suffer misery, as is our fate. Nor could we teach the dear Lord and Shepherd of the kingdom any wisdom, so that you would fail to be meeting the keeper of the gold treasures, the dragon, or to let him stay where he had been long time dwelling in his cavern until the world's end. But he held to his high destiny. Now the hoard is seen by us, grimly got hold of, and at too great a cost was it yielded to the king of the people, and he enticed to that conflict. Just I was within the cavern, and looked upon all the hoard, the decoration of the palace, when by no means pleasantly room was made for me, and a faring was granted to me in under the sea cliff. And in much haste I took a very great burden of hoard treasures in my hand, and bore it forth hither to my king. He was still alive, wise and witting well. Let us now go and see and seek. Yet once again, the heap of treasures, the wonder under the cliff. I will direct you, so that you may look at close quarters upon the reins and the wealth of gold. And one of the warriors carried in his hand a torch, which went on in front. In no wise was it allotted who should plunder that hoard, since they saw some part unguarded remaining in the hall, and lying there, fleeting. And little did any man mourn, when full heartily they carried forth the costly treasures. Then they shoved the dragon, the worm, over the cliff wall, and let the wave take him, and the flood embrace that guardian of the treasures. Then the twisted golden ornaments were loaded on a wagon, an immense number of them. And the noble atheling, the hoar battle warrior, was carried to Whale's Ness. Then the people of the Geats got ready the mighty funeral pyre, and hung it round with helmets and battle shields, and bright burnies, as he had asked. And in the midst they laid the famous prince, and they lamented the hero, their dear lord. Then the warriors began to stir up the greatest of bale fires on the cliffside. And the reek of the wood smoke went up swart over the flame which was resounding, and its roar mingled with weeping, and the tumult of winds was still, until it had broken the body all hot into the heart. And unhappy in their thinkings, and with minds full of care, they proclaim the death of their Lord. Likewise, a sorrowful song, the bride. And heaven swallowed up the smoke. Then, on the cliff slopes, the people of the Geats erected a mound, very high and very broad, that it might be beholden from afar by the wayfarers. And they set up the beacon of the mighty in battle in 10 days. And the leavings of the funeral fire they surrounded with a wall, so that very proud men might find it to be most worthy of reverence. And they did on the barrow rings and necklaces, and all such adornments as formerly warlike men had taken of the hoard. And they allowed the earth to hold the treasure of earls, the gold on the ground, where it still is to be found as useless to men as it always was. Then the battle-dear men rode round about the mound, the children of the Athelings, 12 of them there were in all, and would be uttering their sorrows and lamenting their king, and reciting a dirge, and speaking of their champion. And they talked of his earlship, and of his brave works, and deemed them doughty, as is fitting that a man should praise his Lord in words, and cherish him in his heart, when he shall have gone forth from the fleeting body. So the people of the Geats lamented over the fall of their lord, his hearth companions, and said that he was a world king, and the mildest, the gentlest of men, and most tender to his people, and most eager for their praise.